What's up, y'all? It's your boy soulbodymeta, and as you know, I never lack when it comes to bringing you those facts. This time is no different. First, I want to thank the University of South Carolina and Seeds of Wisdom Youth Program for giving me the opportunity to present this to you. Now, with giving such an opportunity, one would think I would never talk about being psychic or how to tell the future and speak about more practical things, right? Wrong. Step one on how to be psychic and tell the future in your life. The future is largely determined by continued action in your present moment. From the daily routine to all of the unconscious habits we develop, these play an integral and major role in shaping what it is we call the future. Knowing this information, a way that I use a technique to tell what my future will be is for one, to tap back into my past mentally and learn from all the mistakes, see what I did, trial and error, how I was able to progress, where my failures were. Then I project myself into the quote unquote future and envision myself fulfilling my goals. But most importantly, scratch past, scratch future once you do that, because they do not exist. That's right. The past and the future do not exist. The only time it ever is right now. When you tap back into the past, you do it mentally now. When you project yourself into the future, you do it now. So the only way that you can ever have an effect on your future is to be active in your present moment. Continuous action is called by continuous thinking in any present moment, aka now. By thinking, I mean conscious and subconscious thought. Conscious thought would be like your favorite NBA or NFL team, and subconscious thought would be like the organization and the GMs and the people behind the scenes that put the team together and make it possible for you to become a fan. We consciously focus on the Lakers, the Pistons, the Bulls, and never, ever, ever think about the entity behind it that really makes those teams possible. The general managers, the fans, the funding, all of those things will represent the subconscious mind. My point being, your subconscious mind is way more the real you than who you consciously think you are. Unconscious thought anchors all of the thoughts that we think we think. Did that sound like a brain teaser for you? I'll put it this way. Unconscious shaping is the root of all conscious thought and action. I have a lecture that I gave not long ago in Tulsa, Oklahoma, near Black Wall Street, and it was about the importance of learning about your paradigm. No, I don't mean, if you know sense, a pair of dimes, or if you speak slang like I do and you call a pair of beautiful women a pair of dimes. No, I'm speaking about a shift in your mental and subconscious structure, aka paradigm. Shaping your paradigm is the true route to experiencing free will with no restraints. Conscious thought is beautiful. I would even go as far as saying a divine gift from God, but it's important to remember any conscious thought you have first starts in the subconscious, aka how your paradigm works. How dare I link free will and unconscious thought together? Don't take my word for it. Dr. Henry Kong puts it like this in his book called Root of Thought. The experience of will is the way our minds portray their operations to us, then not their actual operation. The real causal mechanism is the marvelously intricate web of causation that is the topic of scientific psychology. The real causal mechanism underlying behavior are never present in consciousness. Rather, the engines of causation are unconscious mechanisms of mind. So, step one to being able to tell the future or know what your future will be is to link your subconscious mind, which is ultimately your conscious mind, and align it with where you would like to be. But then you may ask, well, once I do that, why would there be any more steps? That seems like the only step that is needed. But then you have to think about step two, which is to find out where you are. Your environment plays a very integral role on shaping your future. That's right. You can only become as developed as your environment. Even though we were all born different genetically, the environment plays a major role in how our genes express themselves. I'm talking about epigenetics, the study of how the environment affects the way genes express themselves. We learn very early in school that the DNA structure does not change, but the way that it expresses itself can and does. For example, if you have 10 children and they're all your 10 children, they all have your same genetic code, they all have the same DNA of the father and mother. But where those children are raised plays a major difference in who those kids become and how they think. Some of them grow up on one side of town, some of them grow up on the other side of town, and that heavily influences their upbringing. Genes are the same way. What environment you ultimately surround yourself in will have a major effect on your genes. I'm speaking figuratively, but epigenetics is describing the upbringing or environment of your genes and why they act the way they do. So we know that your day-to-day environment has a direct effect, literally, on the way your genes express themselves. Let's take a more figurative approach for understanding. Have you ever went to someone's house and it is spotless? I mean, extremely clean. And maybe you show up with a bag of your favorite food. I don't know, McDonald's, Burger King. I hope you're not eating that. But if you are, you show up with the food and you finish your meal. And when it's finished, they didn't ask you to clean up. They didn't ask you to do anything. But a lot of times, if you have any kind of integrity, you'll feel unclean. You'll feel like you need to clean your food up because you look around at your environment and the way you're acting and handling yourself is not conducive to it. Everything is clean, you're being messy. On the flip side of things, if you go to someone's house and it is a mess and they have trash all over the floor, as soon as you finish your food, you may sit your bag along with all the rest of the trash. They may get upset and ask you to clean it up and don't know why you're disrespecting their home. Ultimately, it's because you were subconsciously linked to your environment. The environment heavily influenced how you behaved. Knowing this, putting yourself in an environment conducive to the direction you wish to head in life seems to be almost half of the battle of grasping success and knowing the future. So the second rule to being psychic and knowing your future is to control your environment. Place yourselves that mimic and resemble exactly where you want to go in life. And this means from a mental standpoint and your physical environment, aka internally and externally. If you follow me, you know my favorite saying, outside of the truth can't be told, it can only be realized, is proof of your internal is in your external. Okay, last but not least, rule and step number 3 to knowing your future, being psychic, is speak life. It works. It's that simple. We've all heard that words are powerful. We know that the scripture says it's life and death in the power of the tongue. All of these things mesh together to make the same point that I'm trying to make to you today. But if you're not spiritual, if you're not religious, I'll bring a more practical source to you who actually performed an experiment speaking to water. You heard me correctly. Dr. Masaru Emoto, please forgive me if I'm butchering his name. I did the research. I do not know the man personally. He did a widely known experiment where he spoke to water, froze it, and observed the way the molecules form based upon the vibrations in the speech that he did to the water. So for example, he took several samples of water. He spoke to one of them on a consistent basis. I love you. You're beautiful. He took another one. He said, evil, destruction. I hate you. I think you get the point. Here, take a look at the actual samples and you can see the differences for yourself. You can find documentation in detail on this experiment in the book that he wrote called The Hidden Messages of Water. Before I go forward, I feel it is very important to let you know that Dr. Masaru Emoto is considered by many people in the scientific community to be a pseudoscientist. Pseudoscience is things that sound scientifically correct and seem to be correct. They align when you speak them or read them, but they're not rooted in any scientific method. I've found in much research that anyone you find that has an idea or a concept, or study or theory that doesn't align with mainstream science or modern day society is automatically classified as pseudo. This is why in my last lecture I spoke so heavily about discernment. Now, how the skeptics were able to refute Dr. Masaru Emoto's point was they challenged the research. They said it's a ton of molecules in a sample size. And they accused him of being selective with which ones he documented. Meaning, if he spoke to the glass of water and said, I love you, they think it could be beautiful molecules and ugly molecules in that. On the flip side of things, if he talked to the glass of water and said, you're ugly, it can be beautiful molecules and ugly molecules in that. They're accusing him of having selective choosing or selective memory or whatever you want to call it, and only remembering and picking the ones out of the beautiful speech that looked beautiful and only picking the ones out of the ugly speech that looked ugly. Ultimately, you would have to do further research on the topic to decide how you feel about it personally. I would like to say, for the sake of entertainment, let's say that this evidence is irrefutable, which to some degree I believe it is, but at the same time, I'm a skeptic. If it's irrefutable and speech and the vibration of it forms the molecules within the water, then you must ask yourself, what is the way we speak and the way we're spoken to doing to our human biological cells if we're composed of mostly water? My point of all of this is to show you that as far back as I can find in history, all the way up until modern times right now, everyone seems to understand that words form your reality. And if that's the case, we must evaluate where words come from. Your thoughts. So, in conclusion, the secret to knowing your future and being psychic is the 3 steps above. You use those steps to begin to shape your future in the only moment that ever really exists, the present moment. So, continuous thoughts and actions, as well as your most frequented locations, tell way more of the story of who you are than who it is you believe you are. It's Soul Body Meta, y'all. I love y'all.